Welcome back to the news at 10. The chairman of Nigeria's Governors Forum, Dr. Kayode Fayemi, believes South African authorities need to do more to pacify keen observers of the xenophobic attacks in the country. Dr. Fayemi recalls the role played by Nigerians and other Africans towards liberating South Africans in their day of struggle, adding that such should be reciprocated. To him, showing aggression and putting a uniform tag of criminality on all foreigners in South Africa is an error of judgment which smacks of ingratitude. He, however, calls for caution in the clamour by some protesters that Nigeria should sever ties with the country.
In South Africa need to really demonstrate that they actually understand what Africans are saying to them. South Africa is not an island. South Africa is part of a continent that has responsibilities and roles. And part of the responsibilities and roles are to one another. Yes, you can say that some Africans are misbehaving. That may be true, but that's why you have a law enforcement agency. You cannot tie everybody with the same brush. Not every Nigerian who is in South Africa is a criminal. Not every Nigerian who is in South Africa is there illegally. So if you have people that are flouting the rules and regulations and the laws of the country, the weight of the law should be brought against such people. Apprehend them, interdict them, convict them within the law. Bring it to the notice of the Nigerian government. But you cannot allow indiscriminate self-help.
Let's take a look at some business news now. Here's Kayode Okikiolu.
You First. First Bank.
Thank you, Ijoma, and you're welcome to Business News. Africa's largest natural gas plant operator, Nigeria Liquefied Natural Gas Company, is in talks with lenders for a $10 billion loan to finance its expansion. Now, according to NLNG's Chief Executive Officer, Tony Atta, the company is discussing with Nigeria's top 10 lenders to raise as much as $2 billion and with foreign lenders and export credit agencies for the balance. With the planned expansion, NLNG's total output is expected to increase from the current 22 million tons to 30 million tons a year when completed in 5 years, and this is expected to help meet rising global natural gas demand. In the meantime, the company on September the 11th moved closer to taking a final investment decision on the project after naming Saipem SPA, Chiyoda Corporation, and Daewoo Engineering and Construction Company as the successful bidders to build the new plant. And South Africa's economic growth is likely to miss the 1.5% growth target for 2019. The country is facing increasing headwinds, and that's according to the finance minister, Tito Mboweni. Well, this comes as ratings agency Moody's early this week lowered its growth forecast to 0.7% from 1%. A Reuters poll of economists also estimates the country's economic growth at 0.7% this year, and that's up from 0.6% in the previous forecast, while South Africa's central bank sees gross domestic product at 0.6%. Outside the African continent, the London Stock Exchange has rejected the preliminary £29.6 billion surprise takeover bid from the Hong Kong Exchanges and Clearing Limited. In a statement to the stock market, the LSE says it has considered the proposal made on Wednesday and concluded it is fundamentally flawed. The LSE maintains that it sees no merit in holding talks with Hong Kong Exchanges and Clearing and remains committed to its own deal to purchase the $27 billion acquisition of Data and Trading Group, Refinitiv. LSE shares were last up 1.3% after the news. Back here in the country, after a 2-month hiatus, the shares of Airtel Africa records its first biggest gain since its 2-day consecutive loss in July, following its inclusion on FTSE 250 index, which takes effect later this month. Teniola Shoboale has the details.
Hello and and welcome to the Stock Market Report. An 8.19% rally from the NSE's third most capitalized stock, Airtel Africa, contributed largely to the 1.28% increase in the all-share index at the close of Friday's session. The strong gain from the telecoms giant, which follows its inclusion on the FTSE 250 index, marks its first price movement since July the 12th, following a 2 consecutive day 10% loss after its debut on the market. Meanwhile, bargain hunting from key banking, consumer goods, as well as oil and gas components contributed to an additional 171 billion naira increase in overall equities value. Nigeria Police Microfinance Bank tops 31 gainers, up 9.91%. Champion Breweries leads 7 other gainers, down 5.80%, while GT Bank is the highest contributor to a total of 165.33 million shares traded today. And that's the Stock Market Report. I'm Teniola Shoboale.
Thank you, Teniola. Well, the stimulus package announced by the European Central Bank lifted markets across the region and Asia higher today. But it's mixed close on Wall Street amid improving sentiment over U.S.-China trade relations. Well, let's take a look at the figures for Friday. Thank you for watching Business News Tonight. I am Kayode Okikiolu. The news at 10 continues with Ijeoma.
You first. First Bank.
Thanks a lot, Coyote. 4 years after taking delivery of 2 seagoing vessels, the Nigeria Customs Service has launched the vessels into operation. The 2-gun watercraft, named Group of 9 and Customs Pride, will be operational across the west and southern maritime environment. The National Security Advisor, Major General Muhammad Monguno, explains that the choice of the sealing boat will hamper smuggling activities across the sea. On his part, the Comptroller General of Customs believes tough times await smugglers.
Security and well-being is very important.
The Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, will join other African leaders and heads of state in Harare tomorrow for the state funeral of former President of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe. Professor Osinbajo departed the nation's capital, Abuja, this evening and will convey President Buhari's condolence messages during the funeral at the country's national stadium in Harare. Other African leaders expected to attend the funeral include President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa and President Uhuru Kenyatta of Kenya. For more on former President Mugabe's burial and other international stories, here's Juliana Olayinka with Around the World in 5.
Good evening from the Channel's newsroom in London. The Brexit battle lines have been drawn, with the Speaker of the House of Commons promising creativity in Parliament if the Prime Minister tries to leave the European Union without a deal.
We're going to get a deal. That's the plan anyway. And if we don't, we're coming out anyway on October the 31st.
Boris Johnson has repeatedly said he'll meet the October deadline, but he'll be breaking the law if he does so without securing an agreement first. The Prime Minister will hold talks with the European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker on Monday. The working lunch will be the pair's first face-to-face meeting since Boris Johnson entered Downing Street in July.
I'm seeing President of the Commission and the Chief Negotiator, Michel Barnier, on Monday, and we'll talk about the ideas that we've been working on, and we'll see where we get. I mean, I would say I'm cautiously optimistic.
During a speech, he was also heckled over the proroguing of Parliament.
I know the transformative potential of local accountable leadership. Someone with the power to sort out what matters most to local people.
Like our MPs, Boris.
Yes.
Maybe get back
Indeed.
to Parliament.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, I'm all in favor of our MPs.
Yeah, why are you not with them in Parliament, sorting out the mess that you have created?
Would you mind? I'm very happy. I'm very happy to get back to Parliament very soon. But what we want, I think, to see what we want to see in this region is towns and communities able to represent that gentleman and sort out his needs. And
torrential rain and floods have killed at least 3 people in southeastern Spain. Many regions have been affected. Valencia and Alicante are among those hardest hit. Rivers burst their banks, turning roads into torrents, and people trapped in their cars had to be rescued from tunnels as motorways disappeared beneath the muddy water. Drone footage captured the extent of the devastation from the air. Tourists were also caught out by the disaster, stranded at airports as cities were forced to shut down.
Nobody gets out here. Everybody is stuck on the airport.
They cannot pick up their hire car, and the taxis have got the message from the police and the central not to drive because it's not safe. So the few taxis that are coming here, of course for money, but it's terrible.
The row over Robert Mugabe's final resting place has been resolved. The family of Zimbabwe's former president has agreed to bury him at the National Heroes Acre Monument in Harare. He's currently lying in state at the sports stadium. The Chinese president Xi Jinping, former Cuban leader Raul Castro, and dozens of African presidents are among those expected to attend a ceremony this weekend. Tunisia's Prime Minister says exiled former autocrat Zine El Abidine Ben Ali can return home if he's critically ill. Ben Ali's lawyer says the former leader, who was ousted in 2011, was taken to a Saudi hospital in poor health. Prime Minister Youssef Chahed, who's among 26 candidates running in Sunday's presidential election, gave the green light for his return so he could be buried in his home country. The 83-year-old was sentenced in absentia for offences committed during his 2 decades in power. Protesters in South Africa are calling for an end to gender-based violence. Wearing black, hundreds of demonstrators marched on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, urging listed companies to do more to enact change. The United Nations says it's concerned by a US Supreme Court decision which supports controversial immigration measures. A new Trump administration rule requires Central American migrants who pass through another country en route to the States to first seek asylum there.
Our concern is with the people, families, unaccompanied children, and other individuals moving through Mexico today from Central America and elsewhere who are in urgent need of safe haven.
And finally, recognising achievements with a sense of humour.
The Medicine Prize.
Unlike its famous and prestigious Scandinavian cousin, the Ig Nobel Prize, held in America, honours work that first makes people laugh and then makes them think. 10 awards were handed out at the annual event for the most bizarre scientific achievements.
For testing which country's paper money is best at transmitting dangerous bacteria.
We have a proposition for you to get rid of the health risk in your wallet. We please ask you to take your crispy dollar notes, fold them into an airplane, and throw them our way.
The winners each received a cash prize of 10 trillion Zimbabwe dollars, which in monetary terms is almost worthless. And that's your international news around the world in 5.
Thanks a lot, Juliana. We're still ahead on the news at 10. Manchester City suffers severe blow after centre-back Aymeric Laporte was ruled out of 5 to 6 months after undergoing knee surgery. That's on sports. Just stay with us.